Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of the e-commerce lab by Comsi, the place for everything related to Amazon private label and e-commerce. My name is Vincenzo Toscano, founder and CEO of Ecomsi, and today we bring you another special guest. Her name is Juli Lassow, and she's the owner and principal of GHL Solutions, which is a retail consulting firm that connects the dots between mass retailers, suppliers, and private label products. So, Julie, it's a pleasure to have you here today. I know we have a very interesting topic. And by the way, for everybody tuning in today, the topic is going to be around how suppliers can leverage their circular economy to deepen partnerships with the retailers and wholesale partners. I know a lot of people is already thinking, what is a circular economy? And that's why we bring you Julie today, so she can give us a little bit of background on that. Yeah, Julie, it's a pleasure to have you here today. How you doing?
It's so well, Vincenzo. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm looking forward to our conversation and future interactions with your audience.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for coming in. I know we were having this conversation before going live that usually we bring a lot of topics, especially around Amazon and e-commerce and
Mhm.
everything. But I feel like business, when it comes specifically when you're dealing with manufacturing a product and selling it, it has much more complexity, right, than just putting a product online, a picture, and selling it. And that's why I want to have experts like you that can give us a bit of more context around what happens with the suppliers, the supply chain, how we can actually take advantage of things such as the circular economy, which we're going to be
Mhm.
explaining today. Now, before we jump into that, I usually do this with all my guests, and the reason for that is because usually before having my own podcast, I usually like to used to listen a lot of the podcasts, and one thing I used to
Mhm.
enjoy a lot is to learn from the people I was listening from. So what I mean by that is the background, how they got into that, and learn a little bit about their journey. So maybe if you can just share with us how you got into this business area, and what brought you to do your consulting firm. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share. Thank you for asking. Well, I grew up professionally in retail. Even before I was a professional, my first jobs were at a convenience store gas station. I worked in a grocery warehouse.
Yeah.
And when I left university, I went to work for Target stores in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So a US
Awesome.
based retailer, very briefly in Canada, some might remember, but
Yeah.
that was short lived. But
For sure.
I was there for 17 years, and the work I did there was all around the merchandising space. So I started
Hmm.
out in the inventory planning section, analysis. I worked in financial planning, negotiations, and I was also a buyer. But where I spent the majority of my time was in global own brand sourcing. And at Target, own brand sourcing was all about finding the amazing partners that built our own brand products and put them on the shelves. And there's quite a variety of products in Target stores in the own brand space that are, whether they're fully designed internally or designed in collaboration with vendor partners. I would say our supplier partners were some of the deepest connections that we needed to make in order to bring these fantastic products to the digital or our virtual shelves. So it's
Yeah.
always been a passion of mine. I enjoyed my work there an incredible amount. I did get to the point where not many people retire from corporate retail these days. And I
Yeah.
got to a point where there's just an element of the job that I really wanted to focus on was all around partnerships. And I decided to launch a consulting business that was really focused on that in the own brand space and how to build and deepen those partnerships. So
Awesome. That's an amazing journey. Yeah, I like the fact that I mean you've been there in the ground, and what I mean by that, you have seen everything from a big retailer such as Target. So I
mhm,
bet you have seen everything when it comes to dealing with retailers, suppliers, wholesaler. Yeah, for sure, and that's
a
what
fair amount.
most likely brought the experience to umbrella where you are right now. So
Mhm.
now I'm gonna use this as an opportunity so we can start digging further into the topic that we're going to be discussing today, which is basically, as I mentioned at the beginning, how we can leverage the circular economy. So I think this is a term that is not very common, I will say, because I know from listening to different podcasts and talking to people, it's not something I
Mhm.
hear people mentioning a lot.
Mhm.
And it will be interesting that you can give us a little bit of insights about what is circular economy and how it differs from traditional linear economy. And if you can give us a little bit of examples as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And the circular economy is the phrasing that's used in Europe. In the US, the phrase zero waste is becoming more and more common.
Okay.
But it's the idea that when you're making products, when you're making packaging, consumer goods, non-consumer goods, building cities, that
Yeah.
you are minimizing the amount of new material, new resources that go into the production of these products. So
Okay.
there's three really straightforward principles. The first is that when you are designing, whether it's products or cities or growing food, you're minimizing waste and pollution.
Okay.
And that is both from using renewable resources where possible, but also minimizing what's being used if it is a virgin or a newly sourced material.
Mm-hmm.
And you're minimizing the pollution. And so that's also in the waste that comes from making those products. So that's impacting the places where materials are sourced from, how they're sourced, the communities that they're sourced in.
Yeah.
The second primary principle of the circular economy is building to extend life. So think of this as the idea that we are able to find a home for products and their packaging that isn't a landfill, that we're designing something that is fit for purpose. So someone can use it for as long as they want to use that product. And then when they're done with it, there's a home for that product that isn't a landfill. So common examples of how you are able to extend the life of a product are product resale. So we're hearing more and more about that recently, whether it's ThreadUp or Farfetch. There's a lot of different ways that consumers are getting involved in reselling their products. Products can also be upcycled or remade into something new and different, but you're able to keep the highest level of use of those materials.
Yeah.
Other examples that have what we call a larger cycle or a larger circle are things like recycling or composting. So those products are no longer in use, but you are able to find, again, a home that isn't a landfill. So the materials will stay in some level of productive use. Although usually at this point, if you're recycling, you're seeing a little bit less productivity and a certain amount of energy that's going into keeping that product life cycle going.
Yeah.
So that's sometimes not as efficient or as aspirational when it comes to the circular economy. And the third principle of the circular economy is designing, systems that regenerate themselves. So think of this more in the organic space or food space. So it's not just enough to grow organic foods. It's how are you actually able to grow materials that are regenerating the land. So building deeper carbon capture, for example, minimizing waste and pollution in this space certainly as well. But really finding a way, and often creative ways, to make sure regenerative systems that continue to build on each other. But I would say, just stepping back, when you think about the circular economy, there's a little bit of a misnomer that you're closing one circle of waste. The idea really is that you're finding individual loops of waste that you can close, and whether that's internally within your organization, but increasingly as you look and expand and build momentum, you're reaching to your outside partners, which is, I imagine, a bit where our conversation is going to go next, of how do you start working with partners to build some circular systems and close some waste loops.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a very interesting topic because, I mean, we well know that the economy is going towards that direction. Everything is focused now on being zero waste in all different the spectrum as much as possible, and that's where most brands and companies are targeting to. But I think at the same time, we need to understand that also has some complexity when it comes to adapting to the circular economy, because for sure that's going to change your internal processes and how you source the materials, the manufacturing side of things. And basically the reason why I wanted to bring this to the table is because I also would like to use this as my starting point to my second question, which is basically how right now we say suppliers can benefit from this, because I bet a lot of suppliers, when you mention circular economy principles, they say, yeah, this is amazing. For sure, this is something that is going to bring all the benefits that we've been discussing so far in terms of the principles around this concept. But when it comes down to cost, if I implement this and my other competitor, which is another supplier, is not doing it, it's difficult to compete in terms of pricing, in terms of being more attractive in terms of the offer you put on the market. So maybe let's bring that conversation to the table. What are some of those benefits and how you can leverage them to create these partnerships that you're mentioning? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Well, there's a lot packed into that question. So I'll start by answering
Sure.
what are some of the benefits. Well, one, it's wallet share, to be perfectly candid. You are able to come to the table, and if you have a more sustainable product and you are able to speak to the sustainability elements that your core customers are excited about,
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing an increasing number of customers be and prioritize sustainable nature. So
Mm-hmm.
as part of COVID response, so many of us were trapped in our homes or very near to our homes during
Yeah.
lockdown time period. And an element of the awakening that many people went through was just how much waste they're building up in their lives, whether it was products that were being shipped to their door or as they looked in their closets or their storage spaces. There was just so much that wasn't being used. So people became more and more conscientious of how do I get more thoughtful around the purchases that I'm making. And in some
Mm-hmm.
cases, people are buying less. There's still a high amount of spending, don't get me wrong, in many elements of the economy, but if and as the economy starts to tighten up and
Yeah.
expenditures become more narrow, people are looking to stretch their dollar and invest in things in products that are more aligned with their personal values. And I think
Mm-hmm.
we would have said pre-COVID that was very, very true of younger generations, but
Yeah.
now increasingly that's true across many generations. So benefit number one is if and as you understand the consumer you're selling to and you are able to align specific sustainable principles that are important to them. So whether that's organic food or regeneratively grown food, if that's a certain type of cotton, if it's organic cotton or regenerative cotton, if you're making clothing or home textiles, those are elements that are becoming increasingly popular and important to your target demographic, and it's easier than ever to research. So number
Yeah.
one, you position yourself to sell to those customers in a more impactful way.
Yeah, for branding and especially for brand, it's gonna be the job much
Mm-hmm.
easier in terms of how you present the product to them. So 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the second benefit to think about too is it comes from the space of waste reduction.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when you are looking to minimize pollution and waste, that's often gives you the position to stretch your spend, your sourcing spend further. Or
Mm.
you're ultimately able to create new revenue streams depending on
Okay.
which part of the process and business you own. If you are able to sell off your secondhand material or your end material or process in such a way that you don't use excess material when you're producing your products, your spend on sourcing is going to go down, or in some cases,
Mm-hmm.
your revenue
Mm-hmm.
is going to go up beyond just the products that you're selling. So there's some really creative ways that you can think about stretching your dollar further that a lot of CFOs or financial planners within your organization are going to applaud. So it's
Yeah.
another element of sustainability that and circularity that I think is incredibly important. But I would certainly put the third reason, which in some cases is the
Yeah.
bigger why of if it's the right thing to do for the planet in so
Yeah,
many ways.
for sure.
How
It's
do
not
you?
always about the money. It's about the mission. It's about how you see
Mhm.
yourself in the future with your business and making sure
Yeah.
you feel proud about what you're doing with the world. You know, you're
Hmm.
just not printing money and in terms
Correct.
of profit and not care about the negative side effects of what your business is doing with us.
Hmm.
So it's very, very important.
You,
Now,
you did ask a specific question about cost, and I'd love to take a moment
mm,
to touch on that as well,
for sure. Yeah.
because I do think the conversation around building in a more circular, sustainable approach into your production or sourcing processes, um, it can often start with a cost increase. But
Yeah.
as the laws of supply and demand start to shift within the sustainability space, we're seeing an increasing number of partners, of materials that are a more sustainable choice that aren't necessarily the more expensive choice. So that would be
Hmm.
the other thing that I would offer to your audience to think about is that as the demand increases, the costs are going to decrease. And if you're at the forefront of pushing for some of those conversations, asking for the solutions that make the most sense for your retailer partners, for their ultimate customers, you are part of those market forces that are helping to really start driving down prices and make sustainable offers more viable and more cost competitive. So it's both a short term and a mid and longer term consideration when you're looking at your total cost of goods or what you're able to offer your products for.
Very nice. Yeah, well say. Yeah, I think for sure is yeah, it's like anything. It's like when, for example, electric cars came out, they were super expensive,
Mm-hmm.
nobody could afford them, and now they're becoming more and more affordable. I think Tesla just this week or last week dropped all the prices and people were all crazy buying more
Mm-hmm.
of them because they're becoming more and more affordable. It's like when people start adopting the things in masses, it just becomes more accessible to everybody. And I think in the supply chain is gonna be the same. I think as more people start implementing circular economy into their processes, it's going to be easier to adapt it. Now, at the same time, I bet that with your experience and everything that you have seen in the field, you also can comment on the fact that when you're getting started and you are a supplier that need to making the first steps towards circular adapting for circular economy, it can be challenging, right? Sometimes there is a lot of new regulations you need to be in compliance with and change your processes and everything. So for all those suppliers that might be watching this and they want to actually take advantage of the circular economy, what is usually the first step they will have to take to go to start becoming more integrated with a circular economy? What would you say is that first thing they need to? Yeah.
Well, as a consultant, I am duty bound to answer by saying there are three things that you really need to think about when you
Okay.
are approaching circularity. One you actually just touched on a moment ago, and that's regulations. So, depending
Mm-hmm.
on where you're selling, especially if you're entering a new market, understanding what the regulations are, whether it's the products that you're selling or the packaging. So, we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing an increasing number of regulations around packaging and the expectations of what the producer's responsibility is around packaging. Those are incredibly important to understand just as a baseline. And I would say related to that, but sometimes not fully overlapping, is understanding your key retail partners. What are some of the initiatives or goals they have put out of their expectations, or maybe the demographics of your customer? If you're the one that owns the retail shop, the key customers that you are targeting, what do you understand about their sustainable priorities as well? So once you
Mm-hmm.
understand just bigger picture, what is the landscape or how are you approaching it, then I think the work gets really exciting about how you show up and help deliver on those goals, help exceed those expectations. And for someone or a business that's first starting to map this out, a tool or an approach that I really like around circularity comes from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. So Ellen MacArthur Foundation, for those of you who might not be aware, is one of the preeminent groups when it comes to supporting circularity
Mm-hmm.
around the world. They work in advocacy groups, they work with non-governmental organizations, they work with governmental organizations, and they also work with businesses to bring circular strategies to life.
Mm-hmm.
And excuse me, and to do that, excuse me,
That's fine.
'tis the season for just a little bit of a
That's
cough
fine.
there. Uh, for the businesses and the partners that they support, they put forth a fair number of toolkits, and one on circularity is called Circulytics, as in circular analytics.
Okay,
And if you
interesting.
search that online with your internet browser of choice, Circulytics will come up under the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And what it is, it's a toolkit for any organization. So whether it's in consumer goods or
Yeah.
even city planning, you're able to go in and take basically a survey of where you put what are the inputs that your organization needs to run, and what are the outputs? What do you put out into the world? And it gives you an assessment of what are your circular priorities, what's your circularity score, how can you think
Mm-hmm.
about prioritizing closing waste loops and creating more circularity within your business. And it's for any
Yeah.
type of business, regardless how complex you are. I did it for my service business, my consulting business, but
Okay.
I've also worked in partnership with clients that make products.
Yeah.
And we can go through and get an assessment of that. And that really helps map out and understand, again, for those who are just building this new mind map of how do we create a more
Mm-hmm.
circular product or an approach, it helps you understand where to prioritize and how to build in strategies that help build your assessment and build your impact. And you can take the survey annually. So year over year, you get a series of feedback. I've been able to see how my grade has continued to improve over time. And there's some places where I make progress in certain buckets, and some years I just hold steady. And that's the nature of my business, and I would encourage others to be open to that as well. But it's a great
Wow.
place to start.
Yeah, that's a good resource. I'm gonna make sure to put the link down in the description
Yeah, please
because
do.
yeah, I think just to make a quick deviation from what we're talking, I think this even for Amazon sellers and e-commerce sellers that watch this, I think I know we are specializing not right now and talking around suppliers and everything, but I think this could apply also to your products, the ones you're selling online. I mean, I think making
Mhm.
sure
Absolutely.
the new products that you launch online and the branding it becomes as circular as possible. I think is definitely a niche there in terms of how you can compete in the market because we
Mhm.
all know everybody's getting tired of the cheap products coming from China that are just plastic and all this they don't really follow that example of circular economy. And I think having that branding around caring about the environment, having really some product that actually contributes to the air, right, and
Mhm.
destroying it, I think it's definitely something that can help a lot when it comes to upselling your competition. Just wanted to add that there. Now,
Yeah.
going back to our conversation around how suppliers can leverage this with retailers and wholesalers, I wanted
Mhm.
to ask you, now that you have worked with all these suppliers to adapt this new economy within their system,
Mhm.
have you actually seen already a shift in terms of the behavior retailers and wholesalers are adapting in terms of having preference for suppliers that adapt a circular economy, or is something that you feel is still not there? Basically, I want to see how's the market right now around circular economies. Like, are wholesalers and retailers really pushing for this right now, or is something that you feel is still taking time? Yeah,
I would say most retailers that are in the US, and I'm US based, so
yeah.
that is a little bit of my bias, certainly, uh, do have a perspective on sustainability, or they're building one. And I would say within the perspectives, there's those that have very strong and clear goals that have been communicating
Mm-hmm.
them for a handful of years. They have annual reports that can clearly communicate the progress they're making on these goals.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also know that there's retail partners out there that have maybe some aspirational ideas and that the
Yeah,
action plans are still being built. So the
yeah.
expectation is there. And then I think from a supplier's or a wholesaler perspective, then the opportunity that they can have is to be able to show up and say, Target or Best Buy or Walmart or Amazon, I understand that these are your priorities when it comes to sustainability. This is how I can help you meet those goals. Or I understand this is a specific key performance measurement that you're looking at that you're reporting out on. Here's how we've assessed our product and how that will support that measurement. So you can
Mm-hmm.
really meet that partner wherever they are on the spectrum of
Mm-hmm.
what's important to them, what's important to their customer or consumer. And the suppliers that are in tune with that and can build in that messaging within their broader pitch are becoming increasingly successful in
Mm-hmm.
getting products placed and seeing sales
Yeah,
growth and gains in market share.
yeah, basically becoming future proof because
Mhm.
as you start adapting the circular economy and suppliers that are not, you just basically win the purchase orders from these wholesalers and retailers, and you win there. So it's definitely something that people must start doing.
Yes. Oh, I would
uh,
absolutely agree.
yeah. Now, yeah, I think to be honest, we touched a lot of interesting points. I just want to make sure to ask you if there is something that we didn't touch around circular economy or some kind of advice, or maybe case study you want to share as a last gold nugget, as they call it, that you can share with our audience today, so we can get the most value out of you. Yeah.
Oh, I appreciate that. I think I'll take the opportunity to repeat a comment that I made at the start of our discussion today, and that's all around not letting this be intimidating to the point that you can't feel that you can get started.
Mm-hmm.
Circularity isn't about finding one specific solution. A reason why I was excited about circularity is that each business, each customer base, each retailer, they will have different priorities, and there are solutions within circularity that can be sized to fit. You're not closing one huge waste loop. You're finding incremental opportunities to close waste loops throughout the life cycle of your product. So, but the key is to start somewhere, and
Yeah.
often start by mapping, get a sense of where you can prioritize circularity, where it makes the most sense for your business, where it will have the most impact for your customers. Start there, and build momentum from there. That's how I would
That's
frame it for
amazing.
those who are
Well
thinking
said.
about it early on.
Well said. Great summary. Awesome. Julie, it's been a pleasure. Before we conclude, I want to give you an extra minute so you can also tell us where people can find you. I'm pretty sure a lot of people may want to learn more about circularity and how they can implement it into their business. So, yeah, if you can share your contact information, information about your agency and everything. Yeah.
I'd be happy to. Thank you for the invitation. I hope I've been able to communicate my enthusiasm for circularity and zero waste. I think it's an incredible part of retail. So if you are interested in talking more, please do reach out. You can reach me. I'm on LinkedIn, very active on LinkedIn. Obviously, my name is in the
Yeah.
podcast, but it's Juli, Juli, and then Lassow, Lassow.
Awesome.
I connect very regularly on LinkedIn, happy to have direct conversations, but also I share a fair amount on circularity as well. So you
Right.
are more than welcome to check out my feed. Also, you'll be able to link to my website. That's jhl-solutions.com. I've got
Mhm.
a fair amount from other conversations that I've had, some articles that I've written that have some basic information around circularity and in the types of work that I think is incredibly important in this space. And
Awesome.
certainly feel free to reach out over email as well. So it's Juli, Juli, at JHL Solutions. And happy always to make new acquaintances. So please do reach out.
Great. Yeah, I'm gonna make sure to put everything down in the description so people can find it. But in the meantime, I wanna thank you once more, and I'm sure I'm gonna have you in the future so we can keep discussing everything around circularity. I think it's a topic that has so many things that we can keep discussing on so many interesting strategies and so on. So I'm pretty sure we're gonna have many more episodes about that. So it's a pleasure, and looking forward to having the next one. Yeah.
Yes, very much so. I'd be happy to come back.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.